Hey friends, thanks for joining me, Jim Baroud, to hear a few insights from leaders who represent our innovation ecosystem. Today's chat is with Kashif Khan, the co-founder and CEO of the DNA company, as well as Youtrients.
My journey is what led me to what I'm doing, meaning that it wasn't intentional. I actually came from a very different industry. I used to sell luxury goods. So I would sell $5 million paintings, $3 million diamonds to Canada's wealthiest people. That's what I did. I was sourcing rare investment grade trinkets for people that wanted to put their money into something that was sort of tangible. And in that, my strength that I really discovered, it's this sort of self-actualization, was this PR and marketing. To give me anything, I can figure out how to speak to the media about it, how to place it properly. And I went away from like I sell things to like I build stories, right? And I realized that's what I was really good at. And so I literally walked away from that, opened a PR firm, and said, this is what I was meant to do. Doing that in Toronto, I led me to all these startups. We're called Silicon Valley North. I don't know if you know that, but Waterloo University is where a lot of the engineers come from, just outside of Toronto. So there's a lot of innovation happening in the city. In that, it's usually coming from young people that don't know how to commercialize. In that, our PR agency called it an incubator, where all these young guys were coming to us with amazing ideas and saying, hey, I have this app and I need 5 million downloads tomorrow. Well, that's not really how it works, right? So we had to coach them through. The thing that I landed on was this genomicist, a pharma professional, and an ingredients guru, a guy that knew about wellness, right at the time when my health was falling apart. So I'm now 41. When I was, say, in my early to mid 30s, it's mid 30s, I would leave work with migraines. I had eczema and psoriasis. I would have brain fog, like I just couldn't pay attention, no energy, just overall poor health with no direct anything to point to. I didn't know what was going on. This is the same time where I met these three different innovators saying, hey, I know how to build stuff in pharma and I want to open a company. Hey, I'm a genomics guru and I decoded the genome better than anyone. And hey, I've understood natural wellness and how to actually augment genetic expression with ingredients and get to the root cause of things. I literally then walked away a second time. And by the way, this is genetically driven. We can talk about that, why I walk away and start new things. And I handed the keys of my PR agency to the employees. I said, thank you so much. You own it now. This is what I was meant to do. And I personally funded it, started working on it. And we took these 3 pods of knowledge and built them into one of Canada's most exciting biotech companies.
That's great. And so what was the name of that first company, and then you could segue into the name of what the company you're working on now, or is that 2 companies?
So what we're doing now is the DNA company and a company called Youtrients, which is the supplement division. And really, when I say supplements, it's about genetic expression management. So they're really unique ingredients. So the DNA company is the culmination of all these pieces of science put together to say that genetics was this thing that we knew was a jewel inside us, that we could have somehow discovered how our body works and how to be healthy, but people still aren't healthy. So there's something missing. What the genetics industry did, it did a really good job of finding and working on therapies for genetic problems. Meaning I'm born with sickle cell syndrome, for example. I have it. I now need to deal with it and somehow treat it. Some pharma companies out there working on that, they're going to do a great job. That's a tiny fraction of healthcare. Center for Disease Control says that 90% of North America's healthcare budget, which is $4 trillion, by the way, is chronic disease. You're not born with type 2 diabetes. Kids don't have cholesterol problems unless it's genetically, like I'm born with it. All these chronic issues that are the major pain points, we said we need to focus there. Why is this stuff happening? And that's what we did.
Got it. And so the DNA company is the larger company that incorporates all these things. So tell us more about, what the company does, who it serves.
Sure. So initially it was research. Let's make sure that the science fits and it's vetted and it works, right? So the only way for us to do that, we did something unique. Typically, genetic companies will focus on the genes, the DNA. It's a lab with scientists that are studying DNA, and you get a bunch of information. We said, let's focus. If we want outcomes, there's enough science about DNA already, right? That it's well understood. We need to understand people. So we spent 3 years studying 6,000 patients, one by one by one by one, to say, two of you have the same suboptimal cardiovascular genetics. Why did you get sick and you didn't? Right? Simple question. Your genes point to 80% chance of cardiovascular disease. Why did you end up in the 80 and you ended up in the 20? And where research doesn't really go is studying the healthy people, the people that didn't get sick. What were their choices in environment, nutrition, lifestyle? What was the load they were putting on their genetics that prevented them from getting this disease that their genetics said 80% chance you're going to get it? Right? That's what we sort of measured, documented, which led us to answer your question to, we had this parent company that did all this research that is documented and now built an artificial intelligence to wrap around how to dig and use this data, that is now building the products and services that actually support each problem. And each problem needs to be addressed uniquely. You can't address cardiovascular concerns the same way you address female hormone issues in menopause, right? Menopausal woman needs a quarterback that's looking at not just the symptom, but everything going around her. Cardiovascular, you have to be able to integrate with the cardiologist and the existing medical devices and everything that's already there. So we believe we have this hub of science, that's the DNA company that you asked about. How that gets out to people, the product doesn't have to be that hub. It should fit and be easy to use for whoever's already doing that business. That's what we're doing.
Got it. And so how does that company, how do you all work with customers? Who are your customers?
So there's 3 customers for us. And the 2 simple ones are, we sell to sort of executive and functional clinics where it's more like paper service, keep me healthy type clinics. A lot of executive clinics where they literally ordering the tests, getting results. We provide them insights, some coaching on how to help people, and the solutions that are tied to the genetics, whether it's some therapy, supplement, whatever it may be. Direct to consumer, where clients come to us, they buy the test, which leads them into this ecosystem of, I now look at my health differently. I have a personalized perspective on my health. And then there's, from there, again, solutions that they may look at that are, again, tied to the unique genetic problem versus masking the symptom. And then health coaching, which we believe is the biggest piece we need to bring in. Here's your genome, here's the red flags, most likely going to end up in a drawer and I never do anything about it. Versus a health coach that's going to walk you through and change your behavior so that you permanently address those suboptimal abilities, right? So that's how we dealt with the consumer. The third customer, which is the most important piece of our business that nobody sees, is that healthcare innovation. How many companies in this $4 trillion industry are doing something right, but it's still not personalized? Meaning that there may be a company out there that's building a diabetes app to say that we think we can help reverse diabetes, but their toolkit is still the same 1950s, 1960s protocol. They're just wrapping technology and a better package around it. But the actual, what does this patient get? That hasn't changed. So what we're saying is, why do you have 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10 results? Because the 2 or 3 out of 10 were the anomalies for whom that thing didn't work. And we can help you get to the 10 out of 10. Or, if you have something innovative that you truly want to lead with and change the industry with, we all know that medicine is going towards personalization. So we believe we are that Intel inside chip for that allows people to access personalized, call it insights from our 6,000 patients and build whatever you want to build. That's really how we want to go about doing this business.
That's fascinating, Kashif. Now, I know you work with a company based here in Jersey called Avadon.
Right.
I know they're scaling rapidly and really successful. How do you work with Avadon and others like them?
So that's another example of how do you take our insights, plug it into a healthcare innovator, and build something that didn't exist. So Avadon, unlike us, who, if you look at our foundation, it's more like wellness, biohacking, the executive who's spending money on their health. It's not allopathic healthcare. Wait to get sick, go to the doctor and mask it or treat it, right? So Avadon is a coaching platform that supports that allopathic medical community in terms of, I have a hospital, I have a patient that's, has to go home, but it doesn't end there. They need coaching on what to do around themselves, therapy, etc. So Avadon picks up the slack there and says, we'll do all that for you because we understand health coaching. Doctor so-and-so, nurse so-and-so maybe doesn't do that. So just pass them on to us, we'll do it. So it's a support for sort of mainstream medical services, right? We said to them that what you do in terms of the context or structure of, I provide coaching and I understand how to change behaviors, which is what they really are good at. Let's plug that into people that are motivated to actually change, that are buying DNA tests, buying supplements, buying things where they're trying to prevent, and take that, theoretical, hey, I'll help you implement this stuff, and take it to the people that are most motivated to do it. And that's how we've created now these coaching programs that help people literally reverse. We've reversed people from various diseases or prevent if you're not yet ill.
Wow, that's really fascinating. Now, Kashif, where do you see the company 5 years from now?
So it's exactly what I said, that Intel inside, if that's the best metaphor I can use, because we're in this really unique time, and there's two sort of catalysts. There's employers that don't want to pay the bills anymore, not because they don't want to support their employees, but it's literally choking them. The healthcare costs are the biggest burden right now. Second is you have this, worldwide trauma that we just went through of COVID that has put healthcare front and center, and not only healthcare as a reactive product, which was how we've been using it, but as a preventative and wellness product. Like, I don't want to be sick, right? I want to maintain the health that I'm at and not decline over time, right? So there's this general awareness. So the timing for us to go out there and do what we're doing is ideal. And that is why we feel we're growing so quickly in terms of that thing we want to do of, we understand personalization better. We don't only solve genetic problems where we're in a small bucket, but we solve the big problems. We understand how to do the big stuff better. So all of these companies that are now coming out and innovating in healthcare because of the two catalysts I mentioned require us to make them personalized. So in 5 years from now, I see us as that. Call it the SaaS, the platform, the whatever, that supports all the healthcare innovators in terms of their access to personalization to make their product better.
Got it. So we hear all the time about the cost of sequencing is coming down, all these is changing the paradigm, right, in healthcare. Right. So how do you see that from your perspective? Will that just allow greater access or greater dispersion of this technology or personalization?
Yeah, so for sure greater access, and we already have programs that we're building where we say, why is the DNA test even a product? It should be free. The product of the program that we built around it is actually the product, right? So and 2 years ago, we did not think that way. It was impossible to think that way. 2 years from now, I'm very excited to see or anticipate where we're going to go. So if we can be in a place where we can say, hey, every diabetes patient globally, free DNA test, and we'll help you resolve it at a personalized level, that's where we want to be. And I think things are going in that direction. The data and the insights are so much more valuable than the revenue you can get from testing. It's a natural progression in that direction anyway. And that one thing I'll touch on there, and that's kind of, call it a dirty secret of the industry. Everyone's worried about privacy and data security and all that stuff. Because genetic testing is uniquely, in this lab testing world, a product that you only need to do once, right? Your genes don't change. You do it once and you're done. That led to this problem of, well, I just invested $10 million in your company, whoever, DNA 101, whatever they are, and you'd see the customer once and you're done, which pushed people towards how do we, drive recurring revenue, which led DNA testing companies to become data companies. Our customer is no longer the end user of the test, it's the buyer of the data on the other end. So which then forced the test to be designed around, how do I collect the data that the buyer wants, not the data that provides the best insight, right? So that led us to this sort of gap in the industry where there's these hardcore diagnostic tests. You have some rare cancer or some Alzheimer's, something that's very genetically driven. It's diagnostic in nature and it does one thing. then a big gap, and then all of a sudden on the other side, infotainment style consumer testing, which really doesn't give you a lot, but it was an interesting experience, right? But it didn't change my life. That was driven by this data issue. So our intention is not to never become a data selling business, to become an insight mining business. If we can help people drive the best insights, both the end user and the innovator that wants to work with us, then the data in itself, drives a better product. It forces it to make a better product. So that's how we've looked at the sort of reoccurring revenue problem.
Yeah, that's refreshing. So talk to us about functional genomics. I heard that term used lately. What does that mean?
So it's the difference between what the genetic industry is doing versus what people want from it, right? So again, if you have a rare genetic condition, I'm born with sickle cell syndrome, obviously you would want that dealt with. That's your concern. And genetically, that will be dealt with at some level with a therapeutic. And the genetic therapeutics industry, Goldman Sachs has said that, I think they said by 2030, it's going to be a $4.8 trillion industry, which a few years ago rarely, didn't really exist to a high degree, right? So, and that's how you deal with all these rare genetic conditions. Meanwhile, as we said, percentage-wise, and the pain point is a very small percentage of people that have these conditions. What most of healthcare is chronic disease. That's functional genomics, meaning I'm not trying to mask the symptom. I'm trying to figure out, why is that thing happening? And the best way to sort of paint the picture of this is maybe give you an example, right? So one of my good dear friends, who was actually an early investor in the company, we had like a friends and family round. He had a cholesterol issue at the age of 38. We're the same age, so this is going back 3 years. I was also 38. And it didn't make sense. He was a pharmacist that took care of his health. He exercised 6 days a week and ate well. So it didn't make sense. None of the typical triggers. So we dove into his genome, and this is now what functional genomics says. We looked at his cardiovascular, because that's where it comes from. And yes, he did have a specific gene variant that points to a higher likelihood of cholesterol issues, but it still doesn't explain why. It just puts you in a bucket, right? You now need to watch out for this thing and think about your lifestyle choices. But what are those choices? Because I don't know why it's happening. We then went deeper. Why is it happening? The why is there's a process called glutathionization, which is essentially your detox system. The ability to bind onto a toxin, send it to the liver to metabolize and pee it out, get rid of it. These things are not meant to be in your bloodstream, right? There's two genes that do that really well for you. One, first line of defense of the lungs, I breathe things in. One at the gut, I eat stuff, mold, pesticides, whatever, things that were not meant to enter my bloodstream. He was missing them. Forget about what version of the gene, he literally didn't have the gene. So that instruction to bind, get rid of, he didn't have that instruction. So now imagine the impact of going into a chemical factory or whatever, and he doesn't do what people normally do. I can handle this. He can't handle it. What was he doing? He was golfing 4 days a week, which sounds okay. But what do you do when you're golfing? 4 or 5 hours at a time, you're breathing in all these pesticides and chemicals that he doesn't have the ability to clear. So they're just free flowing in his blood now. The 3 days that he wasn't golfing, 2 of them, he was playing tennis because he believed he needed to stay fit. So he was doing high intensity tennis. When you play tennis, any high intensity cardio output, you end up dipping into your mitochondria, which is your battery of your cell, and you create energy by taking nutrition and oxygen and turning it into energy, right? That's what your cells do. But in that process, the oxygen becomes oxidant, which is poison. Genetically, he did not. There's one gene called SOD2, which determines how well you do that, clearing that oxidant, that sort of soot or smoke from burning the fuel. He didn't do that well either. So for 4 days a week, he's breathing in all these chemicals that he can't clear. 2 days a week, he's putting this load on his cell of this oxidation from playing too much tennis, that high capacity, I'm breathing heavy, right? He had cardiovascular, going back to the very first thing, the poor version of the endothelial lining. So your arteries, which is where most heart disease happens, the inner lining that the blood actually touches and flows through, he had the bad quality lining, paper thin, right? That's where genetics usually stops. Paper thin endothelial, 80% chance of cardiovascular disease. But why did 20% not get it? And why did 80% get it? Him, the 80% that had the bad detox system, the bad SAW2, poor anti-inflammatory response also, this thing now has the things that would cause the inflammation to it, free flowing in the blood. You need something to trigger the problem. He had plenty of it. What is the body's response to inflammation at the endothelium? It would actually send cholesterol as a hormone to reduce the inflammation. When cholesterol meets toxicity, which he had plenty of in his blood because of his poor genetics, it hardens and gets deposited. It doesn't move, which leads to a cholesterol buildup. So he didn't have a cholesterol disease, cholesterolemia. He had a detox and anti-inflammatory disease. He wasn't able to clear, which led to inflammation, which led to etc. So you could have the same exact genetic profile as him, put him on a beach somewhere with no pollution, no stress, good food, sleeping properly, and he would never get sick. Take the same genetics and do what he was doing, chemicals from the Gulf, as a pharmacist dealing with a lot of chemicals, all that stuff. And then the tennis, which was causing the oxidation stress, and led to that early onset of inflammation in the endothelium, cholesterol. Now he has a disease.
Wow. That's an illuminating example.
Yeah. So that's functional genomics. Why is it happening? And if we can deal with the why, we can reverse the disease.
I see. So, pretty much everyone has some issues, right? So they can all be found out and treated properly. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah. So we've in our research, we've dealt with 6,000 people, right? Those 6,000 people, I would say there's maybe 25 that we said, you're superhuman, go home, you don't need anything. And truly superhuman, when we find them, that they're just incredible, perfect genomics. Otherwise, the other 5,000 plus all had issues that they either knew about or they didn't know were coming yet. And we were able to augment their environment, nutrition, lifestyle to either reverse or prevent.
Wow. That's really interesting because no one ever thinks of going golfing or playing tennis as contributing negatively to your health.
Exactly.
That was really, really.
And this is what personalization means. We're not saying don't exercise. What did we tell him? We told him he needed to do resistance training. Even hormonally, the genetics of his hormones pointed to pushing heavy things, weight training. That's what his ancestors probably did. And he feels a lot better now. He actually literally feels better because hormonally he's more balanced now. He's doing the things that he needs to do. So it's not really binary yes or no. It's more personalization. How should you be doing this activity you want to do? How should you be eating? What time should you be eating? Carbs, fats, proteins. What should your plate actually look like? Everything. You think of a thing that you do when it comes to health and wellness, your instruction manual, your genetic code already has a preference in how you should do it. So just imagine being able to understand that.
Yeah, that's really illustrative. It's really fascinating. So are you saying that at some point everyone can go to, say, your website and find, get their sort of DNA profile,
right,
and be able to apply some fixes or at least behave better or manage things better? Or is it all through either a doctor or a program or a third party?
Yeah, so it's depends on the problem. Starts with the test. So it starts with even understanding what's needed, what's even wrong. People want to know what's wrong with me and how do I fix it. That's kind of the easiest way to deal with healthcare, right? So it starts with that. What's going on? And not just what are you feeling, the symptom or the pain, but what's really going on, understanding that. Then what do we do about it? The what do we do about it part is either referring you to some kind of product or service or telling you need to go to a doctor for this reason and take this report with you. So that's the second part. What is the solution, the therapy, right? The third layer, which we've recently learned is maybe even the most important for the outcome, is the behavioral change, which is now that we've identified what's wrong with me, how do I fix it? How do you actually get someone to do that, right? And implement. And so we work with Dr. BJ Fogg. He runs the Stanford University Behavioral Change Lab. When it comes to even the science of behavioral change and the whole thinking, he's the sort of guru or pioneer that sort of created all of that, right? So we said, here's our reports. Here's what we think we know. Here's what we recommend to people. Here's where we upregulate people to a medical professional. In all of this stuff, how can you wrap something around it to make sure people have better outcomes? So he did that, and he made it very easy to use. And so now these coaching programs that we were talking about earlier are built with his behavioral change insights in mind. Something as simple as, I can't sleep at night. Well, maybe your BDNF gene, your brain-derived neurotropic factor, you have the suboptimal version. So when it comes to the blue light of your laptop, it's tricking your circadian rhythm into not knowing it's bedtime, because that blue light spectrum is triggering daytime in your brain, right? So something as simple as that, the behavioral change is you don't take the laptop into the bedroom, right? 2 hours before sleep, you have to turn the laptop off. Block 1 hour in the evening to get all your emails done, so you're not anxious about going to your laptop. So things that when you hear them, like, I already know that. It sounds so simple, but you're not doing it, right? You need that guidance, those nudges to change your behavior, to implement how to correct the thing that we identified as wrong.
Got it. Got it. And so people are always talking about now gene editing, right? Is that, talk to us about the future. What are the possibilities, like 5, 10, 20 years out?
So gene editing, I think, is, for me, very exciting, because the technology of this is how you do it. Now the question becomes, just like we're saying to healthcare innovators, we've created this personalization database, go build stuff, right? CRISPR is saying, we figured out how to splice and edit genes. Now innovators go build stuff. For me, that's where we would be the opposite, where we want to use that technology to say, we now uniquely understand why this disease actually happens, chronic disease. And I also believe, in what I'm about to say, that part of what drives us in that direction is, I don't think healthcare is something you disrupt. You don't go out there and say, we're going to get rid of pharma companies. We're going to get rid of doctors, right? It's too indoctrinated. It's too institutionalized. It's too regulated. Safety is too much of a problem, working with FDA, et cetera. You have to be part of it. You also can't operate outside of it, because if you're doing your own thing, well, you're not really part of the system. Well, how do you get paid? How do doctors prescribe it? How do you not look like a fool when everybody says you're not evidence-based, even though it works? Those types of things. So there's a challenge of people trying to work out here, and there's a challenge of people trying to disrupt. You have to intertwine yourself with the system, which for us is, we have insights. We don't need to disrupt the system and the players. We just need them to make better products that actually address the disease properly, right? They can still do their business, but the outcome can be better for the patient, because they're not in pain. They're happy with the result. It's not about, how do I get treated for 15 years? How do I stay healthy for 15 years, right? The last 15 years of my life. The on the other end, the supplier, manufacturer, whoever it is that builds that product, has a better product now. So they're still in business. They're just resolving this in a better way, right? So that's what excites me about the future is gene editing. I believe all of these insights that we have will lead to, as opposed to supplement therapy, change your exercise, diet, et cetera, I will be able to prescribe you a gene editing product that will resolve the genetic suboptimability to give you back that superpower you're missing. I can give you the good endothelial lining, so you're not prone to that inflammation, right? If I know how to edit the gene properly, et cetera. The other big one is AI, because it's getting so good that I think that clinical journey is going to change. I go to my primary care, they figure something out, they may upregulate me to a specialist. The specialist will try and detect something. Then they may recommend a therapy. All of that, up until that step, can be replaced by AI, right? And probably with better precision. In fact, there's clinics in California that already are doing this, where people pay for the service. It's not yet cleared as a product, and they get diagnosed by this AI. Scans are being read, ultrasounds by AI, doing a better job finding things. So again, I'm not saying that this will disrupt or get rid of primary care. I believe that it'll be a tool that primary care uses, right? It'll just be a better tool. Instead of relying on my memory, I'm going to rely on what the AI, and I just become the interpreter of that thing. I become the quarterback. And hierarchically, this is where we believe healthcare is going to change. It's not going to be the patient at the bottom that is being funneled through all these various channels. It's going to be more the patient in the middle. And the technology is going to connect you to all the various players. So you're going to be more of the owner and curator of your healthcare journey that points to the specialist, that points to primary care, and everybody goes back to that central hub that links all of your data and all of your. So the hierarchy is going to completely change also because of the technology.
Right.
Those are three of the big things that we see.
What about, babies or, fetuses?
Yeah.
I mean, are we going to test what 30, 40, 50 years out? Is that something that you see happening, just so we can alleviate all, or most problems?
I think it's going to happen in a twofold. It's going to happen in terms of early detection of genetic conditions when the therapy exists, and reversal or removal. So you're going to have this optimization that happens at birth or even prior to. It could happen in the womb. And then there's the chronic disease part, which is what I'm talking about, where it's not about flipping a switch on a gene, right? I'm going to turn this gene off. You won't be born with the problem that you were going to be born with. It's more about scanning the genome and understanding the red flags. You are at greater risk for diabetes. You don't have it, but if you do this, you're going to get it. So it's literally providing the parent the instruction manual. We're actually working on that now. We've done the 6,000 patients who, of course, were adults. We're taking those same insights and reinterpreting them in the context of the various stages of childhood development, from toddler to and so on to teenager, etc. And building that instruction manual for parents to say, should your kid be playing football because they're more prone to concussion and it's harder for them to recover, genetically already predetermined? Should you drive your kids towards medicine, accounting? What are they cognitively? How are they wired? We know that now from the day they're born, right? How do you discipline this child versus that child? Is this the child for whom you yell at them and for the next few days, if they even see you frown, they can't handle it, versus the child you yell at them and 5 minutes later they're doing the same thing again? That's all driven genetically. We understand the neurochemicals and the process of what would make someone behave in that way. So imagine the parent understanding how to discipline their child, where to guide them in terms of athletics, in terms of academics, in terms of arts, body development, everything that they go through in terms of, I want to have some form of what I believe is optimization, whether it's size, fat, muscle, whatever that is, and knowing how to actually get there, knowing what my superpowers are, knowing what my weak spots are, right? That's all. Here's your child's instruction manual. I buy a microwave, I get an instruction manual, right? You don't get that information about your kid, not to the level of detail you get with a microwave, but it's available. It's in our DNA. It just wasn't decoded. It wasn't accessible. That was the problem.
That would be amazing. That would be amazing. As a parent, that would relieve a lot of stress.
Yeah.
And make,
so by this time next year, it's going to be in use. We're building it now.
That's great. I can't wait. So this has been a great conversation, Kashif. So much to talk about. But why don't you end with a poem or a saying or something to leave us with?
Sure. So there's two thoughts I have. These are the two thoughts that are with me every day and kind of drive the way I think and help me detach from sort of fear of progress or taking risks and just do it. One is a well-known one, which is Henry Ford saying, whether you think you can or you can't, they're both true. It's really up to you, right? So you create your own reality in terms of what limitations you put on yourself. The second one is, and I heard this from a religious leader at an event many years ago, which is work like it comes from you, but pray like it comes from somewhere else. Meaning, don't stay humble, right? You gotta do it. You gotta work towards it. Don't expect it to fall in your lap. But remember, when it comes, to stay humble and remember that it can very easily be taken away also, right? And just never stop working. So those are the two things that kind of drive me and keep me grounded, right? And just keep me focused on work.
Great. Those are great quotes. Thank you for that, Kashif. And good luck with your company. And thanks for joining us today. And we look forward to seeing great things going forward. Thanks for joining us. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please like it, leave a review, and subscribe. See you soon.